Hello, my friends. So I want to start today's video with a quote from the poet Rainier Maria Rilke. And here it is. It's from something called Letters to a Young Poet. I want to beg you, be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves. The point is to live everything. Live the questions, and now. Perhaps you will find them. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. So let me read it slowly again. I want to beg you, be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves. The point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some day, some distant day, into the answer. You will live along into the answer. So, I've been pondering some of the open questions in science, and I have them here, actually. I just looked them up recently. These open questions in science have been published periodically. I first came across them in 2008 in the journal Science. But here's another reprint of them later in 2022, actually, 2022. And here they are. They were published in The Guardian, I believe. Okay, so the first open question in science. Open means we don't have the answer, okay? What is the universe made of? And let me read the little paragraph. Astronomers face an embarrassing conundrum. They don't know what 95% of the universe is made of. Atoms, which form everything we see around us, only account for a measly 5%. Over the past 80 years, it has become clear that the substantial remainder is composed of two shadowy entities, dark matter and dark energy. The former, first discovered in 1933, acts as an invisible glue, binding galaxies and galaxy clusters together. Unveiled in 1998, the latter is pushing the universe's expansion to even ever greater speeds. Astronomers are closing in on the true identities of these unseen interlopers. Okay, so that's the first question. 95% of the universe is invisible, and the 5% that's atomic, most of it is invisible interstellar dust, and the 0.01% that makes up 2 trillion galaxies is made of atoms, but atoms are made of particles, and particles have a wave-like nature as well. Unless measured, they don't exist as particles. So what's the universe made of? Don't know. The best answer could be nothingness. And there are other questions here. How did life begin? Are we alone in the universe? What makes us human? But the second open question in science is, what is the biological basis of consciousness? Or what is even more deep or more intriguing, what is consciousness? Short answer here, we're still not really sure. We do know that it's to do with different brain regions networked together rather than a single part of the brain. The thinking goes that if we figure out which bits of the brain are involved and how the neural circuitry works, we'll figure out how consciousness emerges, something that artificial intelligence and attempts to build a brain neuron by neuron will help with. The harder, more philosophical question is why anything should be conscious in the first place. A good suggestion is that by integrating and processing lots of information, as well as focusing and blocking out rather than reacting to the sensory inputs bombarding us, we can distinguish between what's real and what's not, and imagine multiple future scenarios that help us adapt and survive. Very unsatisfactory. Okay, so here is my take. These open questions and science. Number one, what is the universe made of? And the second, what's the biological basis of consciousness? Are incorrect assumptions. And therefore, there's no answer to the wrong question. Every question, of course, starts with an assumption. And the first question, what's the universe made of, actually assumes that the universe is made up of atoms, force fields, particles, at least the visible universe. And that which is invisible, we'll figure it out, We'll find a particle called WIMP for dark matter, weakly interactive massive particle. And we'll figure out what the real cause of the energy is that is expanding the universe, something called dark energy or cosmological constant, which is a mathematical construct where the measured value and the actual value are off by 1 to the power of 125 orders of magnitude. So we are assuming in these questions that the universe is made of something, a particle, weakly interactive massive particle, and even the dark energy, which is the opposite of gravity, is some kind of force. And gravity, of course, is also frequently thought of as some kind of force. So here's why I think these questions are incorrect questions, and they will never be answered if you start with the wrong assumptions. The universe is not made of anything, and there's no biological basis of consciousness. I'll say that again. The universe is not made of anything, and there's no biological basis of consciousness. What do I mean? Well, look at anything. Look at my phone. Look at that painting behind me. Look at a book. And before you can call it an object, it's actually a perceptual activity in your own consciousness. And therefore, it's an experience. It's an experience. And it's the knowing of experience. Any object or any force field, gravity, space-time, whatever, anything that you can give a name to, before you give a name to it, it is an experience and the knowing of experience. And that knowing is of two kinds. One is perception, and the other is interpretation of that perception, which we call thought. So every knowing is either a perceptual or cognitive ability, and in our case, purely human, perceptual and cognitive human activity. That perceptual and cognitive activity occurs in human consciousness. And then it is labeled as such. This is gravity. But before you can call it gravity, you have to have some experience. The classic example, the apple fell and Newton discovered gravity. He had an experience. Or classical example, that may or may not be true, but that's the one that's given, apple falling and Newton coming up with a theory in his consciousness, of course. And then, of course, you have the example of Einstein riding uh, 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 on a light wave, traveling at the speed of light and coming up with the theory of special relativity. Okay, but both those experiences were either perceptual or cognitive or thought-like. So perception and interpretation of perception create the mental construct that we call objects and force fields and so on. In reality, in order to experience perception or thought, you have to ask, what is it that modifies itself into perception or thought? And I think it's very obvious that it is awareness that modifies itself as perception and thought. So you cannot experience this unless you're aware of it. And awareness of this is actually a perceptual activity of consciousness, knowing itself as this. Knowing itself as this. Consciousness perceiving itself as this. And then labeling itself as an iPhone. You get it? This iPhone is a modified form of consciousness. But so is your body. So these glasses I'm wearing, so is my shirt, so is everything you know. It has to be an experience first. And now here's the great mystery of experience, and that is no perception exists independently of other perceptions. Okay, so this perception doesn't exist independently of this perception, those other perceptions, all these perceptions that a human being is capable of. This is the coalescing or interdependent co-arising in a matrix of interdependent possibilities that are all entangled. But this particular object is the interdependent co-arising of entangled modalities of knowing and experience of perceptions and thoughts. This. And so is everything else. So everything from stars, galaxies, force fields, atoms, molecules, bodies, paintings, eyeglasses, hair, teeth, anything you can name as an object is actually an interdependent co-arising of perceptual and cognitive activity in a formless ocean of infinite possibilities, which are all entangled, all interdependent co-arisings. And each of these is a kind of a momentary wave in the vast ocean of consciousness, which is formless and fundamental and borderless and infinite and inconceivable and imperceivable, but giving rise to all concepts, all perceptions, all forms, and all phenomena. The interdependent co-arising of space-time events moving very fast, because by the time you perceive them, they've already moved on. And this interdependent co-arising can also be called entanglement or superposition of possibilities in the formless sea or ocean of infinite possibilities. So, who are we? We are the matrix of interdependent, impermanent co-arisings and co-subsidings that arise in the ocean of formless being. And that's our identity, formless being, assuming form and phenomena And everything that we perceive is ourselves as an interdependent co-arising of space-time events interpreted as objects by humans, by the human mind. So not only is this interdependent entanglement constantly happening in the ocean of infinite entanglement or interdependent co-arising, but it's also impermanent. It comes and goes, and it's all in the ocean of the formless void, which is the womb of creation. And that's who you are, the womb of creation. And everything else is just a convenient mental construct that includes matter, energy, information, space-time, objects, force fields, gravity, anything that you can name or has a form is the activity of the nameless and the formless. And that is who you are. Now, if we actually totally understand this, then we can embark on a spiritual journey. And as I've been kind of, reflecting on the spiritual journey, asking myself, who am I? I realized that's the wrong question too. Who am I? Is assuming that I am something, or that something is a person. So maybe a better question is, what am I? What is it that wants to know? What do I want? Well, if there's no I as a person, then the question becomes irrelevant, right? And I'll explore this with you a little more. What is my purpose? Again, if I is not a person, then the only purpose is the larger purpose of the formless being that is evolving as space-time events on an infinite, never-ending horizon of possibilities. And then the last question, what am I grateful for? I'm assuming that I is a person that needs to be grateful for something or the other. This car, this house, this relationship, this body. But if I is not a person, even that is a wrong question. I can explore this more with you if you want. But for now, just understand or try to that the two most open questions in science are probably the wrong questions, and therefore do not have answers. Let me know if this is of any use to you. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's very liberating to me that all my problems, so-called problems, come from an entity that is a person, and in fact, there is no such thing. The person is another process interdependently co-arising in the field of possibilities in an entanglement that is an ongoing, ever-changing process that temporarily can be labeled as Deepak Chopra. Once I realize that, I'm free. Freedom comes from knowing truth or getting closer to truth.